Hi everybody, welcome back for another tutorial. And today we are going to be looking at drawing hair. So hair is a tricky thing to draw. Oftentimes I see people do things that maybe look like this. So we get a head here. Use a little bit of a darker pencil. And then to do some hair, they just start drawing all of these little individual lines, trying to make this look like hair. And what ends up happening is it just kind of looks like a bunch of scribbles on the page. And then before we know what's happened here, we just kind of have a big mess. So we don't want to draw hair like that. We want to pay a little bit more attention to the shape. So let's take a look. We have a few different hairstyles here. We'll kind of take a look at everything. So what we're gonna do is we'll set up the head using this same technique that we've been using. So, you know, we get like this round part and then we build her face off of that. So maybe we have something like this, the shape of her head. And then, you know, if we wanted, we could worry about all this other stuff, facial features and stuff, but that's not what we're focusing on. We're focusing on hair. So here's what we want to do. We have a basic head set up here, and we can darken that in a little bit if we want. So here's her head. Like I said, maybe we have some facial features there, whatever. So here's what we want to do. We kind of want to look at the big parts of her hair. We want to outline some things. So what I would do is I usually focus on where the hair frames the face. So she has a part up here, and you know, I guess her ear is a little bit important here for this, but what I would do is I would get some lines put in first. So I'm gonna get where her hair frames her face, meaning where her hair like goes around the face. So I have this stuff. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna focus on the big chunks. So I have a big chunk here, and I'm gonna get this big chunk drawn in. Maybe it looks something like this. I have a big chunk here. Maybe it's something like this. And then I have some other little chunks here and there. And what I'm doing is I'm focusing more on the overall shape of everything, not the individual hairs. Because like I said, we don't want to just draw a bunch of squiggles, a bunch of lines, because it just ends up kind of looking like a mess. So we get something that's a little bit more like this. And then at the bottom here, we get all kinds of hair. We can start using just some little lines to show where that hair ends. So maybe I get something that looks a little bit like this. I can erase some parts of her face so that we can see where that hair is. And then what I can do is I can start looking at things like highlights and lowlights. I want to focus on where her hair's the lightest and where her hair's the darkest. Because once I get those things in, then it starts to actually look like hair opposed to just some odd shapes on the paper. So I can do stuff like this where it's really dark and I can add shading like this. And by shading, all I'm doing is I'm making lines that travel in the direction of her hair. So her hair's moving this way. You can see the individual strands of hair, and I'm just putting some lines in there that represent that movement of the hair, but also represent where those shadows are. The hair up here, same thing. So I'm gonna just use some lines that all move in that direction of the hair. And then maybe I add some like this. And I'm making lines still, but I'm not making big long lines that sweep the entire length of her hair. What I'm doing is I'm focusing on, like I said, things like highlights and lowlights, dark places, light places. And I'm really starting to just kind of build some layers here. And I can darken where I have like these strands. I have this little part back here that's in shadow. I guess she has a neck here. So she has a neck somewhere in here. And there's some shading around her face here. But I'm drawing her hair in chunks. And this is what's gonna give it a little bit of a better feel. Than just drawing all those individual hairs. And it's a process. Hair takes a while. There's a whole lot of stuff going. There's a whole lot of layers in here. And you really have to build those layers up before it starts to look like hair. It's a slow process. So we can take a look real quick at some other ones. So I have another person here. It's maybe something like this. And her neck is maybe here-ish. So with shorter hair, maybe I want her ear in. Again, I'm gonna approach this the same way. I'm going to get these basic shapes in. So I'm kind of drawing like an outline of everything first. And I'm looking at just the big chunks. So I have like a big chunk here. I have a big chunk here. And then I have the rest of her hair. It kind of comes down like this. Some that goes behind her ear, some that goes in front of her ear. So I have something like this. So, you know, a little bit of a mess to begin with, but that's okay. We can erase that outline of her head because we don't really see that. And this ear is actually back a little bit more. Right, nose, mouth is somewhere around here just to give us some points of reference. So, and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna just start working little by little. I'm gonna really look to see where the highlights are, where the lowlights are. I'm gonna pay attention to the shape, and I'm gonna, again, just start to work this by just putting some big chunks of hair in here. Starting to just get a feel how her hair flows and what's where. And once I start to get some basic shape, well, I can start to see that she has these highlights here. And then I can start to see some lowlights around this hair. And I can start to see some darker stuff here. She has like a chunk of hair that comes this way. And you'll have to erase stuff as you go, and that's fine. Again, it's layer building. And then it gets maybe a little bit darker up here, and we start to see some more loose hairs. So like I said, don't be afraid to take some time here because this is a process. It's not going to look like hair right away. You can see, or maybe it'll look like hair, but maybe not the right type of hair. It takes a little bit of time to develop this stuff and to start building these dark parts, building the light parts. And then as you begin to go, it starts to develop. Same thing, we got one more here. And again, we're just gonna do this the same way. So set up her head, Get that head shape in. She has a hat on, so that's gonna cover a little bit, but we're gonna do this the same way. I'm gonna just start by framing her face. And then maybe I'll focus on this outside edge. And we put some of these shapes in. And her hair has a lot more curl to it. So that gets a little bit tricky. Curly hair can be a little tricky to draw, but we're approaching it the same way. And again, I'm gonna start working these dark spots. I'm gonna start adding those low lights in, start focusing on that stuff. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna slowly begin to develop this. Now, some hair takes a little bit longer to develop than others because, like I said, you might have curls, you might have waves, you might have any number of things. But the important thing here is to keep all of your lines going in the direction of the hair. So when you have curls, that changes the flow. Everything's not going straight away from the head. You then all of a sudden start to have some shapes that change direction. So your pencil lines should follow the direction of the hair. And then you're gonna start to see this develop in the same way that my other ones did. And eventually we'll get to be where we want this to be. Okay? Now, that was long hair. Here's short hair. It's a little different. Short hair, we focus a little bit more on the shape, even though we're still kind of paying attention to these same things. So we get something like this. So if I'm doing something like this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna follow more the hairline. So same thing, I'm kind of working on how this hair frames the face. Even though it's not long hair, it's not hanging down around the face, what I do wanna follow is I wanna follow that hairline. So for short hair like this, it's a lot more about getting the overall shape down first. Again, you can throw his ear in. But I'm focusing here a lot more on the overall shape. Once I have that overall shape down, then I can do the same thing. I can start looking to see where those highlights, where those lowlights are. In this case, I have like these lowlights that travel down the base of his hair here, kind of wrap around the crown of his head. And then I start to get some stuff like this up here. And again, I'm not drawing every individual hair, I'm just kind of drawing these lines that give the impression of hair. Really, I mean, they're just nothing more than scribbles. For even shorter hair, again, we're approaching this the same way. I'm looking at the hairline here, at how this hair frames his face. So maybe I get something that looks like this. And then I'm just making little scribbles, again, to outline his hair. So with short hair, this is really the easiest way to do it. Focus on hairline, then focus on the shape. And we can do that with each and every one of these. So focus on hairline, so head. Ear down here. Hairline, and then focus on shape. I mean, and really, hair is nothing more than just a bunch of scribbles when it comes to drawing. So don't be afraid to make messy drawings because, like I said, the hair will develop after time. It's not something that will immediately look like hair right away. You have to begin to work at it. It's the same thing, pick up highlights, pick up lowlights, start adding this stuff in. And you know, obviously different hair, different textures are gonna require different sorts of shading, different sorts of moving. Curly hair is gonna move a little bit differently than straight hair. But the process is all the same. You're getting that shape in, you're adding lowlights, you're adding highlights. Okay, and then here we have one that's similar to the long hair we did. It's just shorter in scope, right? But I'm doing this the same way. I'm focusing on how it frames the face, and then I'm focusing on the shape of it. And then once I have that in, then it's just a matter of paying attention to those different chunks of hair, paying attention to highlights, lowlights, making some nice scribbles in there. And then you can start shading in some of the darker stuff. And then leaving some of the lighter stuff unshaded. And those little shaded areas create that illusion of hair. Okay? So, that was a lot. It was a big, long tutorial. I know I covered a lot of stuff. But there's no like one simple, easy way to do hair. It's a process. It takes time. It's building up layers. It's starting off with basic shapes, going in, adding shading, erasing things, adding highlights. It's a process. So hair is one of the harder things to draw, but the biggest thing I can stress here is just take your time with it because it's not something that happens immediately. It's something that you have to build. It is a process. So that there was maybe not a quick tutorial on hair, but nevertheless, a tutorial on drawing hair. So I hope that this stuff was helpful. I hope it gave you a couple of pointers, a couple of ideas. And thanks for watching, guys.